Hello and welcome to tonight's IncrediChat. I'm Michael Gracia, and our first guest, who was supposed to be David Reddick, had to cancel. He had something come up, but that's okay. We're going to reschedule for a future talk with him on my upcoming Get in Tune interviews, which start this coming Tuesday on right here, and it's going to at 8:30. Actually, I'm sorry. At We're having Renee Pfizer, who's an Australian cartoonist, as the first guest. He has a Kickstarter going on. It's fantastic. There's a lot of cartoony fantasy stuff. So, what we ended up doing was deciding to bring our 9 p.m. time slot guests to 8 p.m. here, and we're going to go the full 2 hours because there's so much we can talk to about these guys. They're incredibly talented gag writers. They're incredibly talented and skilled artists, and I've been following their work for years. They're not only friends of mine, but they are fantastic at what they do. I keep reading their stuff. I keep laughing every day. And one of the things, their work can only be found online. And I want to make you guys aware, especially during this time when a lot of us are still quarantined. Not many places are opening yet. You need every day, maybe a good gag. These are the guys to give it to you, make you laugh. So let me bring on first. We got Roger Phillips of the Gray Zone. And we are bringing on as well. Hello, Roger.
Hey, Michael.
Francis. I'm sorry, Francis. I've never asked you, actually. I've never had to say your last name. Is it Bonnet or like Bonnet?
Bonnet.
Bonnet. Okay, so Francis Bonnet.
How you doing, guys?
So thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm actually thrilled to talk about this. Comic strips. They're like my all-time favorite thing. I've always been a strip guy over a book guy. Although I do love Superman, I'd rather choose Beetle Bailey. You know what I mean? Or Calvin and Hobbes. That's my thing. So I read your stuff every time you post. Roger, you post every day. Francis, you post 3 times a week. And I make sure those are some of the first things I check out.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So thank you. You're welcome, actually. I don't need to thank you. So why don't we just go? We'll start with Francis. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your type of the type of comics you're doing right now, and the work that you do within the comic industry, and we'll go to Roger.
Yeah, sure. So I have one of my books here in front of me, but so I work on a comic strip called Suburban Fairy Tales. I've been doing it for, I can't believe it, but it's been 15 years now.
Wow, that's awesome!
Congratulations.
I'm not on the screen. You guys continue talking.
So it's about fairy tale characters. They all live in the modern day suburban community, and they all go to high school together. I think my inspirations were probably Peanuts, Garfield. These are the things that I grew up reading, and Archie comics, which gets into the other thing that I work on. I work on Archie comics as well. So this is actually one of I do the writing for some of the digests. So this one just came out, I think, this week. So I do that as well, and I do gag writing on the side for Rhymes with Orange, which I only work on the Sunday ones, but I'll tell you that story later on. But I do that as well. So.
I do want to say before we move on to Roger, I am such a fan. I have all. Except that one he just showed.
That's the newest one, yeah.
Francis's books here, and I go back and I read them, and I love that he said that Peanuts was one of his inspirations because they sit right next to some of my Peanuts books on my shelf.
I'm honored to be sharing shelf space with
good company.
Yes. And before we go on to Roger, I'll show you his book.
Ta-da!
I love this book. I've read it cover to cover at least twice. I'm currently going through it again. And I pull it off every now and then. I want to read a gag. He's got some beautiful, beautiful stuff in here. So we're going to put up the links to their pages later, so you can learn where you can get stuff. But Roger, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, not unlike Francis, I've only been working for 10 years. I thought that was impressive, but
That's impressive.
he's not
Yeah.
done. And I too was inspired by those classic cartoons, like of course Snoopy and Peanuts and things like that. And sad to say, Family Circus, because some people who are critics of my work, they say, I'm the reincarnation of the Family Circus.
There's nothing wrong with that strip. I love it.
No, it's funny because
I got
tomorrow's
the-
gag will have something to do with that.
Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Bill Keane one time.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, so every strip has its place.
I think so too. There's something to be gleaned from any of them. So those are my big influences, and I would say number one, of course, would be Charles Schulz. But my drawing style is more in the vein and influenced by Don Martin from Mad Magazine. He was my my all-time hero, and my bedroom was, plastered with my reproductions of his artwork.
That's awesome. So let's, you kind of mentioned your inspirations. It's kind of one of the things I like to talk about, and you guys, can choose whoever goes first on this. And you mentioned, Roger, that you had your room plastered on of Don Martin recreations. Like, I want to know, I'm interested in your inspirations. What got you into wanting to cartoon, though? Become a cartoonist. You know what I mean? Like not just, hey, I want to draw. Like, why was it? What was it about the strips? Because a lot of people want to do comic books, and you guys really don't do comic books. I know you write for Archie, Francis, but you're not putting out comic books. You're putting out comic strips. So why was it strips over books? So, like, what inspired you with that? So whichever wants to.
I'll let
Go ahead.
Roger go first.
Okay, so just as a young kid, my parents were big readers, and these are the days of those dollar paperback books, those little, comic books, and then I just got hooked on Mad Magazine. That's the first introduction to cartooning, and never really had the ability or the patience to do a comic book, in the vein of Hulk or Spider-Man. I read them. But I did like the cartooning look of it, and I like the immediacy of it, and it's probably also a bit of impatience that you can quickly do a gag and get your idea out quickly. And there's something about, the single line or a few lines, the gesture that is exciting over comic books, which are very crafted, and they have a bit of a formality to them that I don't, I don't identify with as much.
I get that. Francis, how about you?
So the reason I went into comic strips rather than comic books was, I grew up reading mainly DC. I was a huge DC fan.
That's me too. Yeah.
Superman, Batman, and it was the original 1978 Superman movie that really got me into wanting to do comics.
Yeah.
But I remember there used to be a used bookstore around the corner from my house growing up. And, here I'm like a kid, I'm like 7, 8 years old. And I go into this bookstore, and in the humor section, they had piles of the Fawcett Peanuts books.
That's it.
And, I had no money, but he was selling for 50 cents. And so I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. Let me buy this. And I loved it. And I loved the humor. I loved the simplicity of it. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. And what I respected about Charles Schulz was that he did it himself for 50 years, and it's just amazing to me. And that's what I wanted to do. So that's really what inspired me. And I like to make people laugh. I like to be funny. And some comic books can be a little too serious. As much as I love like sci-fi and superheroes and stuff, I felt like my strength was the gag and the humor and the art.
Yes. Actually, I want to pull another thing off my bookshelf just because, Roger, you mentioned and so did you. You both mentioned the little books, know?
Right.
And I want to show you something from my personal collection. Whoa, sorry, tripped over something there. I have some of the old Hagar.
Yeah.
Heathcliff.
Heathcliff. All right.
Another Heathcliff. But what I also wanted to show you, and I bought this because they're starting to do this, or I don't know if they stopped it now when it officially came out, but they're doing, this is a little larger, you can see, but they're doing these smaller books now for kids, I mean, it's in the bookstore. I don't know what I paid. I paid $5 for this.
Okay.
which isn't a bad deal. And you get these great, old strips of Peanut stuff. So I don't know if you've seen these.
They had the hardcover collections that came out. I forget who published those. Was it? I can't remember the book publisher publishing, but it was like they did from the 1950s all the way to 2000.
Yes.
I have them over my bookshelf.
You got those are nice. I got volume 1 in soft cover over here, but yeah, they were. I'm like you guys. I mean, I have my Snoopy shirt on here. It's we all have a love for Schultz there. So Roger, you talked about your style, and it was kind of Don Martin related, which is great. Mad Magazine. I love Don Martin. Actually, about a month ago, someone commented on one of my Instagram pictures, says very Don Martinish. I was like, that was one of the greatest.
High compliment.
And I'm like, that's cool. So, that is a love. What inspired? I want to go to Francis. I want to know what inspired your style, because it's a very simplistic stuff. We're going to take a look at it in a little bit, but it works. It works well. It's very, simple lines, simple backgrounds, but it just everything blends beautifully together the way you do it. So, like, what inspired that simplistic style from you?
Are you asking me or Roger?
No, Francis.
Oh, okay. So it was definitely Peanuts. Was, like I said before, Peanuts was a huge inspiration.
Yeah.
After I started reading Peanuts, I just moved on. Like, what are other comics that are like this? So I moved on to Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes, and then the shows that I was watching at the time, which you mentioned, Tiny Toon Adventures.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went on.
We were talking about that before. So Tiny Toons and just like a lot of those humor, Looney Tunes type of cartoons that were funny. They were simple. They were like right to the point. And The Simpsons was also a huge inspiration.
Love The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, because they've been around for 30 years. So I was I don't want to say. I guess I'll tell everybody how old I am. I'm 40 years old. So I was 10 years old when it started. So
Yeah. No, that's great. And that actually leads into something, and maybe you've already answered the question, Francis, by saying what you said, and if you haven't, you can answer. Then we'll go to Roger. Where does your humor, you think, comes from? Like, what type of stuff inspired that in you, and how? And I actually want to ask both of you this: what is your process for writing a gag? So,
a lot of it is just day-to-day stuff. Like, sometimes I'll see something on TV that might inspire me, or just living life is the biggest.
Yeah.
Also my high school years, I think back to a lot of things that happened in high school. I like to people watch. So, it's harder now because, we're having to stay, socially distant and isolated, but, just walking through like the park, or walking through the city, New York City, and you get inspired by people watching. So.
Yeah. How about you, Roger? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Are you another part of your question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Roger. Yeah, there was.
Finish it up.
I asked you what was like some of your inspirations, and what is your process for writing?
Oh, right, the process. So I have it here. I have an idea book. Sometimes the ideas just come to. These are just actually some. I don't know if you can see, but just I write different. Yeah. I put put my ideas in boxes, and I just write out the strip really loosely. And I'll just sometimes I'll write 7, 8, 9, 10 strips, and most of them are terrible. Then I go back and I'm like, maybe I can salvage this one. Yeah. And so that's what I do. I just fill up a book full of like terrible ideas, and then out of 20 pages I'll find 3 or 4 that I'm like, okay, I'll use those. So that's my process.
Okay. Roger, same question. Where's your inspiration for your humor come from, and what's your writing your process for writing the gags that you do?
So for me, it's mostly like wordplay, and then if I hear a funny phrase or a term, and it sounds funny in my head, and then I'll play it in a different way, and then insert an alien into it.
Yeah.
Basically, that's it. So, the whole premise is that the aliens are cold and logical, and then most of the humor comes from when they have the human qualities, that are bad, like forgetfulness or greed or whatever.
Yeah.
That we don't attribute it to those creatures. They're supposed to be perfect. But mostly, if I hear words that sound funny in my ear, or a phrase or something I see on television totally unrelated, and then that just triggers an idea. I'm just trying to think of a few. One was when the election first happened with Trump and Clinton. There was bumper stickers that said, giant asteroid for president, because they wanted it to strike the earth and kill everybody. So that inspired a joke where the alien is doing a stand-up routine, and he says, "How about that election? Where's a big asteroid when you need one?" And in the audience, somebody stands up and he says, "Too soon," and it's a dinosaur. So that came from a bumper sticker that I had seen. That what would a dinosaur relate? What would he think about that? He'd be offended by that.
So, and I don't know. I'm going to continue with Roger, but Francis, I don't know if you already answered this question. If you did, I apologize, because I know you mentioned your strip and kind of this what it's about. But Roger, how did you come up with the idea of just focusing on aliens?
So, the repeatability for me is a little difficult. Like if I see like a Charles Schultz, he's drawing Linus. It's always perfect to me. He draws Linus perfectly, and then I have a little bit of trouble with that repeatability of a particular character.
Okay,
just more of an artistic deficit. So when the time came for a subject, it was my father that suggested the alien, and then I was able to draw it well enough and quickly enough, and it looked similar throughout panels. So that seemed to be a good good subject matter, and I found it interesting. And I didn't see too many other alien-themed cartoons. And some of the criticism of it was that it should have a character, like a Calvin or a Hobbes, rather than these kind of nameless creatures. Like that's Frank the Alien or Zork. And then I always pointed to, I think, everybody's hero, Gary Larson.
I was about to say,
who never had another character appear twice in a strip. They looked similar, but they were not. Frank didn't appear in every. So that's where I kind of gelled on that format.
How about you, Francis? What inspired you to go with the fairy tales in high school?
So I actually used to do a strip before Suburban Fairy Tales, which was called Crunchy, and it was about like a little girl's pet turtle, and he was a crazy turtle. I don't even know how I came up with that idea. It was just based on characters that I made up in high school.
Yeah.
And then one day I did a strip that involved fairy tales, like it was a Jack and the Beanstalk parody, and I really enjoyed that story that I did in that strip. So I decided, probably a few months after that, to end Crunchy and just see how I would do with Suburban Fairy Tales, which is take fairy tale characters and put them in high school, modern day high school, and see what would happen. And I don't know, Michael, if you know this, I actually ended the strip a year and a half after I started it to do the Made to Malfunction, which I saw you had one of those books.
Yeah, where did I put them? They're over here. Let me see which one. Yes, Made to Malfunction.
Yeah, so
fun too.
The first Suburban Fairy Tales book, it ends and continues into Made to Malfunction as a spin-off. I wanted, I had these two ideas at the same time. One was Suburban Fairy Tales, the other one was Made to Malfunction. And I went with Suburban Fairy Tales, but I just had this itch in me to do this one about a scientist and a robot, and just I wanted to do it, but I couldn't do two at the same time. I just felt like I just didn't have the I didn't want to spread myself too thin, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did Made to Malfunction for 2 years, then I went back to Suburban Fairy Tales, and I've just been doing it ever since.
Yeah. I mean, they all look like they fit together in the same world. I was just looking at that, so it's great. And why don't we show a little bit of your work right now? We're just going to take a look at it because I think we got a couple few viewers here, and if anybody has questions who's viewing, feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to have them answer your questions. So let me just bring this in, and we got who's up first? Francis. I'm going to go full screen with this, and you can talk about it. Now, your first picture. Oops, I got to click it on the other monitor here. The first picture you have up is Archie Jumbo Comics. So you write Archie. Tell us a little bit about how that got started. What kind of Archie stories do you write? Do you only write for that looks like a digest book?
Yeah, so I've only written for the digests. So the way I got into that was, it was just years and years of really trying to get in. I knew somebody who worked in the Archie offices. He's a friend of mine, and I would say, hey, are they looking for any work? I do this comic strips for fairy tales, and he said, no, they're not interested in anything.
Yeah.
And it probably took about 10 years of me asking and trying to I just wanted to put my work in front of them. Mm-hmm. And then one day he told me that I guess somebody there was reading my strip and said, hey, let's give him a shot. But it wasn't to write a story. It was to come up with what you see there on the cover is a cover gag or a cover idea. Yeah. He said they're going to give you a shot to do a couple of covers. And that means that it's pretty much, I come up with the cover concept or the gag on the cover, and then they pay you for the gag, and then it goes to like Dan Parent, who I believe he did the cover there, or another artist, and they actually get credit for the the illustration and the inking and all of that. But I was like, that's fine. I got my foot in the door, and after about a year of doing covers, I finally was given the opportunity to write a story. Yeah. And they must have liked it because it just started to increase the number of stories that I was doing. And now I'm doing, anywhere from like 6 to 10 stories a year now.
That's
which
great.
Has been great.
And by the way, that's Jeff Schultz who drew that.
Oh, is that? Yeah, because you have it right here. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Who's a friend of us here at Incredicon and an amazing talent. I love looking at his work. Let's take a look at another piece of yours here. Let me just get my pen out. Maybe easier on my Cintiq. So let's take a look at this comic. This is your latest strip. This came out today, correct? No,
that was yesterday. It might have been yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So you're using 3. So that's one of the 3 little pigs. That's the third one, who is, from what I gather, the lazy but innocent, almost childlike of the group, but has sometimes the wisest, thoughts. Am I correct?
Very pure. Yeah, very pure, but also not very smart.
Yes. But that's great to have characters like that. Like in Beetle Bailey, they have Zero. And Zero's that style character. I actually have, I can't turn my computer right now, but I actually have a big poster behind me of it was done by Mont Walker, but it's a little story of Zero. He writes a little thing on the wall, and Beetle and one of the guys are reading it, and he just writes this most beautiful like essay on life and about how to treat people and whatnot. And at the end of it, the last panel, they're bringing Zero food and just stuff just out of the kindness of their heart because they were moved so much by it. So having characters like that, I love in strips. So let's just go through here real quick just to see the next strip. But first, just in case people haven't read, I'll read it. So the ghost says, "So, are you coming inside the wolf's house with me?" He says, "I don't think so." He continues, "I don't want to risk being eaten and ending up as a ghost like you." And he says, "I understand." So the ghost says, "I'd hug you goodbye, but I'd likely pass right through you." And then he leaves with, "Just like when I eat when I eat baked beans." I mean, great classic joke, fantastic with that innocence about him, that purity. I love it. Is there any strip on here that, you know, if I was to pull up that, you know, that like you're just super proud of and want me to share with everyone here?
Well, that's actually part of a story. That's the latest part of a running gag.
Yes.
I actually really liked the one that's right underneath the Archie.
Okay.
That one I actually had a really, I thought the punchline was very funny to me.
Okay, so it said the pig is talking to the ghost, and the third pig says, "Okay, I'll take you to the wolf's house." Thanks. Once I get there, I'll haunt and torment the wolf until he passes out in fright. And then the pig says, "Is that a casserole?" He says, "It would be rude to show up there empty-handed." And
Very good.
very good. I love that one. I remember. I mean, there's my little heart on there filled in. So, you know, I like that. That was a very good one. I like that too.
Thank you.
You have a great sense of timing with your jokes. I think you know where. I mean, and you use the proper characters for them. I mean, but doing this for 15 years, I'm sure it's almost. I know you said you write stuff and sometimes it's terrible, and that happens to all of us. But it's almost. I feel like at the end of the day, these characters might be writing yourself. Like you can say, I want Pig and this character to go together, and you can write dialogue for them without an issue. You know, is that how it comes up to you, or?
Yeah, sometimes I'll also come up with a situation, and I'll be like, all right, so little pig number 3 wouldn't say this, but little pig number 1 would.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually happened with it's one I'm actually working on now that I haven't posted yet, but it actually involves just little pig number 1 and 2, and I originally wanted number 3 to be in there because he's my favorite character, but he wouldn't fit into that the dialogue that was going back and forth between the two of them. So sometimes you come up with a situation and you insert the characters that would be saying that.
Yeah, I know exactly what I think. Some of the ones I really love, I got to say though, and I'm just this is personal, is when you have the pigs talking about their mother. I love what you did with their mother.
Yeah, I think I did one recently where the mother threatened to come visit them.
Something like that. There are 2 right here. Is there any down below? Yeah, it looks like you have a few things. This might have been. Let's just see here. Mom changed her mind about coming to visit. She can't get a flight. That's great news. She said she wants to do a video chat instead. No problem. Video chats are way less painful. I can see by the looks of you the food scarcity isn't an issue over there. He's like, never mind. Like, it's that classic mother that's just overbearing constantly and telling you that basically you're doing wrong. You know, it's hysterical, you know.
I remember you mentioned liking that story with when the mother did come to visit. I think it was from last year. I think you said that was that one of your favorites? I also know you mentioned the sock puppet one was one of your favorites too.
Oh, the sock puppet was hysterical. I don't know how far back that goes, but yeah, I mean, you guys, I could sit here and just gush over your work like crazy and tell you which pieces I love and you know what is it, but I don't even know when the stuff came out that I'm looking. Certainly, it's like when I look at Roger's work, I'll think about it, I'll be like, oh wait, that was a really good joke, but I won't know where to find it because it's been, you know, a month, 2 months, or whatever.
It's very
yeah, it builds up. So we just keep producing work, so you know it just pushes the older stuff further down.
Let's take a look at some of Roger's stuff here, and. Do you want me to start with anything in particular, or
let's do the first one on the upper left? That's the newest.
I do like that one a lot.
Yeah.
It's got a little filled in heart for me here. So it says, "How are we going to sneak back into the base and get our ship back?" The guy says, "Leave it to me," and they show up as an Amazon Trojan horse type of thing. It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
I love it, and that's Area 51 for people who didn't know. Yeah, and the only reason I'm reading them is because. The way I see them on my screen, they're a little small. I don't know if they're small to the audience. So if the audience out there are watching, you can let me know. I mean, I don't mind not reading. I can leave it paused so you can hear it in your own head in your own voice.
You have a good narrating voice. I like your voice. I think it's good.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just reading the next one here. Wait, are you guys Catholic? Episcopalian. Episcopalian. I mean,
Episcopalian, yeah.
yeah. I didn't like that one. I know I liked it on Facebook.
Okay. Some people didn't understand it because it was just a letter change. I didn't know. I had to look it up, But Episcopalian is spelled with an A at the end, Lian, and he's E-N. So it's just I like a little bit of wordplay and grammar and things like that.
I thought this one, I'm pointing out this one I cracked up at.
No, I'm glad.
It was the Slinky going down the steps of the pyramid. And it's like, your turn.
But I think some of my drawings skew older than I was anticipating, because I don't think anybody under 30, or maybe even young as Francis there, knows what a Slinky is.
Oh, I got a tiny one around here I was playing with.
Oh, good.
Earlier, when I started work for some company, I forgot which one now. They gave me like this welcome package, and it was all like just dumb little trinkets to have.
Right.
And there was like this little green. Oh, here it is. It's a little. You guys can see it. The audience can't. It's a little green Slinky here, and I just sit and I play with it throughout the day. It's like one of those pass the time type of things. So for me, I love it.
Cool.
Anything you want me to pull out in particular here?
Scroll down a little if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So what's interesting? Maybe Francis would also agree or disagree with me that I like to do sometimes some current things that are going on currently in the world. Obviously the COVID.
Yeah.
Thing is a big deal. Click the one in the middle with the two spaceships. The little blue one. Yeah.
Wow.
So everybody's baking now. That was a big deal about about everybody's baking bread at home.
Yes, I do remember. I see your stuff on Facebook, I think, more than Instagram. So I know I like that. I just like it. But this is great. It says, "Wow, fresh bread. Is it ready yet?" No, it still needs to proof. Just.
And of course, it proofed too much, So that's kind of like a classic gag. And I get a lot of comments like, "Boy, these guys, they really suck at flying ships, because they're constantly crashing the ship."
Yeah, it's fantastic. These things. I literally laugh out loud. And there's days I'll look at your work, and I've told you this. Where I'll look at your work, and I was just reading a comment I gotta mention. But I look at your work, and then I'm like, he needs to stop the strip today. This was like, you just went all out, and this is the greatest thing you've ever done.
Good night, everybody.
And then the next day I look, I'm like, nope, this is it.
Thank you, man.
You'll have like a week straight of you just knocked it out of the park so hard that's what you retire on.
And I feel like you get those little like a runner's high.
Yeah. I mean, I laugh at your strip every day, but like I said, they're just those days or those weeks where it's like, wow, just one right out.
And I wish I could keep it up. I'm like, what happened? What happened?
I'm gonna just come back to us. I'm gonna remove the screen. We can always go back to the screen and look at other work. And for the moment, I am gonna put up. Oh, I didn't mean that. Sorry. I want to remove from stream right here. For Francis, Nancy Siebelkleit, who we interviewed on Sunday here, says, "I can see it because I have one, LOL," meaning your book that I was asking if it was larger.
Right.
So and for those who don't know, she is the co-CEO of Archie. I keep messing it up. I say co-owner, co-chair, but no. I know it's kind of the same stuff, but it's co-CEO is the proper title. I like to make sure I have that down for her. So let me put up just your Instagram accounts. If you want me to put up anything else, you can. So Roger Phillips is at the Gray Zone Comics. I'm sorry, at Gray Zone Comics, and Francis Bonnet is Suburban Fairy Tales. These are strips you guys need to subscribe to. You guys really need to subscribe to. So I got more questions coming, but like I said, if you guys, you're looking at each other's work, you've read it. If you have any questions for each other, just interrupt me and say, "Hey, I want to ask one."
Okay. Actually, I did for Roger, because you mentioned before. I didn't want to take away from when Michael was talking about your work, but you had mentioned about topical
Right.
Like staying topical with the, and yeah, I sometimes will try to do something that's topical, but I'm always in the back of my mind thinking like, I think of like Doonesbury, right?
Yeah.
Doonesbury is very, it's political, and they're talking about what's going on in current events, but like maybe a kid looking back at Doonesbury from like the early '90s is not going to get the joke today.
Yeah.
So I always try to like I did do a couple of coronavirus jokes.
Okay.
But I didn't mention coronavirus or COVID-19 by name.
Right.
Because I tried to write it so that what's going on. They're stuck home, like the one that Michael showed with the mom saying, "Oh, food scarcity because there's the meat shortage and all of that." But I don't want to. I want it to still be funny 2, 3, 10 years from now.
That's a great idea, and I think it has a more of a timeless quality to it. So any generation could do it. I'm sorry.
Like Peanuts.
Yeah.
To Francis's point, just quickly. So I did a strip, I guess, a year ago or 2 years ago, where the alien has crashed his ship and his friend is on the ground, and the alien who crashed the ship is pointing up and he says, "I got cut off by a red sports car." Doesn't make right? What the hell is that? I was referring to Elon Musk when he put that car in space. Do you remember he launched?
Oh yeah.
Like nobody knows it now, and so people are angry. They're like, "What the hell does that mean?" So it lost its relevancy very quickly, but it was really popular that minute.
I've done that before, and I know I did a joke. This was years ago. Remember when Charlie Sheen was acting all nuts? On the talk shows and everything.
The winning guy.
Yeah, and I did a Charlie Sheen joke. And he was saying the whole thing like winning, and the turkey or chicken winner whatever he was saying.
Chicken dinner.
Yeah, winner chicken dinner. And so I did a Charlie Sheen joke, and it was funny at the time. But you go back and read that now, and I was like, that
nobody remembers it. Yeah,
nobody remembers it. So that was just a lesson to me to just be careful. You can be topical, but try to write it so that it will be funny 10 years from now.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
Good point.
It's hard to. I always look at that, especially like movie wise. That's what comes to mind when you guys were just talking. Like there are the Disney cartoons which don't reference modern day nothing in any form. They're not really pulling music from our modern era in any way. They're not doing any of that. So like you can constantly rewatch a Disney film, and it's always kind of like the first time you've watched it because it's you're not have to thinking about what's going on. But you look at a movie like Shrek or any of the Shreks, and it's constantly topical. Everything is in there, and it's like I can't watch Shrek now because I don't always remember what was going on what they're referencing, and I felt like, I don't know if you guys seen the new Scoob movie, which
Not yet.
Previews.
It was a very good film. It was fun. If you're a Hanna-Barbera fan, there's a lot of like Easter eggs in there, and it was fantastic. But and I'm not going to spoil anything since you haven't said it, but there are a couple of places where they use kind of topical references, whether it's in music or a character or something like that they're kind of referencing, and it's like, in 10 years will people remember that person? In 20 years will that be, and it's like, will it get the same laugh it got when I watched it when it came out? You know what I mean? Like and when I do my work, I try to think in that method. How can I stay timeless? But you guys have good points here, with Francis saying try to write it in a way that you're not referencing what's going on, and sometimes I don't even think in that way, so
I just found it like as a cheap and easy way to get more upvotes and points, because people seem to think like relatability, like, oh my god, I feel that way, and then they start upvoting it or clicking like on these topical issues. It seems like a cheap way to kind of elevate your profile.
Well, yeah, you're able to stay topical. Like I said, I mentioned COVID-19, but not by name. Like they were stuck home. So it was one of the recent strips where I said they were stuck home for whatever reason, but if you don't mention it, it could still be funny. Like I said, 10 years from now, without mentioning it. So,
yeah. What I wanted to say next, like one of the things I said in the beginning, before I brought you guys on, was, during this time we're quarantined, I mean, I know they're starting to open up stuff. We all live in New York, and things are starting to open up, and which is great for some. I'm one of those people. I still enjoy just being in my house here. But how has this quarantine time affected you? Has it affected you positively or negatively as a creator? I mean, creating these comics, as it, you know, obviously there's more time to do stuff, but that has having that extra time hindered you in any way, or has it been beneficial to you? Whoever wants to take it first.
Go ahead, Francis.
Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, part of what inspires me is just living life day to day, people watching, and it's a little harder to do that now because I'm not able to like really go out there, see people, see friends, and yeah. So again, I find it probably a little harder to write, but I think that's probably what's been the hardest, is just not being able to go out there and see people, even going to the store, people watch that's affected me a little bit. Yeah. So it's I've been able to do it, but it's just been a little bit harder.
Okay. How about you, Roger?
I don't think it's that. I don't feel like it had that much of an impact because I get most of my inspiration from news and YouTube and trendy things and tweets. You know, so it's not nice to say, but any sort of event kind of is a good subject matter, you know. So when good things happen or bad things happen, it is, you know, it's like fertilizer for your head. So I feel that whatever's happening, even if we're stuck inside, it's kind of happening out there as well. And then, you know, my process is different. That anything can happen, good or bad, and it just keeps going, you know, on an even keel.
Okay, that's interesting to me the same way, because like I know Roger's a very active guy. You know, I see the pictures you post, and you're just always doing something. So, but it's you know, it's interesting how you're keeping your kind of same life you said, I think, before we went on.
Right.
And so it really hasn't affected you. But for someone like Francis here, who you know, the being around people is what helps you out. It gets a little harder, and I can see that. I've personally, for me, I found that, I don't know, some days it's easier. Most days I think it's hard. So, like Francis, I pull my ideas from walking around. I mean, I'm not one to usually go a lot of places, but I feel that if I'm not even just walking around the Barnes and Nobles or something, you know, to do it, people watch a lot too. It gets a little difficult to write.
I also feel like my ideas are a little limited because of what's going on in the world. That my characters are in high school.
Yeah.
But I feel like, should I be writing them in high school right now, because a lot of schools are closed and that's not happening? Kind of like over the summer. I won't write them in high school over the summer. They'll be at the beach. They'll be doing kind of beach things.
Yeah.
So I feel like that limits what I can write about as well.
That makes sense. My next question, or just kind of comment, and I want you guys to talk a little bit about this. One of the reasons I brought you guys on, as I said in the beginning, is because there's not much happening. You know, like I started with the COVID. This is another kind of lead-in from that. I want people to have access to good, you know, comics that they can read while they're, you know, stuck inside, or if they are able to go out and they're on the train again or the bus, they could be looking at this on their phones and getting a good joke. Now, you two, unfortunately, and I'm really sad about this, are not syndicated. You know, the traditionally syndicated artists, you know, obviously get their stuff in the newspaper or somehow online or whatever, and they get money based on, you know, strip success or whatnot.
Right.
You two are probably two of the funniest people and most talented people that I read regularly.
Yeah. Thank you.
But you guys were working on a website off Go Comics called Comic Sherpa. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit about that, how that helped you, and then it eventually ended, and has that hurt you in readership since Comic Sherpa disappeared? So whoever wants to start.
Let Roger go first.
Okay.
So like Francis, you know, I've been on there for a while. In the beginning, I liked it because it was more visible. I'm still posting on there. I don't know how visible it is to the public. And you know what? They have like a copyright information on the bottom, and it says 2012. And every year they swear that they're going to upgrade the website, and they never do. And then, like right now, it says 2019. They're like, we're going to have a whole new site in 2019. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then I think the premise of it was that artists like Francis and myself, we would be exposed to a large audience, and then they would gauge the appeal, you know, by readership, and then you could make that leap over the wall into the world of syndication. I still do it. Occasionally, I hear from the guy that kind of runs that site, you know, that hang in there, that type of thing.
David Stanford is.
Yeah, David, and and there's always that hope burns eternal. You know, I know that the world's moving on from print, and it's moving on from this old model of these. Now everything's together. That Universal is now the huge umbrella of all these amazing characters. So you got to go with them or King Features, I guess.
I want to say this. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do want to say this. Our David Reddick, who had to cancel, his work is syndicated online. I know he does stuff in the newspapers as well, because he works on Blondie and stuff. But his personal strip, the Intelligent Life, that is syndicated by King Features.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Online.
Comics Kingdom, right?
I think it's on Comics Kingdom. I'm sure it is. I mean, all King.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, though. Please continue.
And no worries. And then the dream is to become syndicated. I don't know. I mean, is it like an affirmation, or like it affirms you as an artist or as a cartoonist that you want to be in that, cross that threshold into that world? And I think I don't know if Francis feels the same way, but that's my goal. Not to be rich over it, but to be recognized as a professional in that realm. And the fact that he works on Archie Comics, to me is amazing. I think that's so cool. So I like that validation that comes with syndication.
But I gotta say, if you've been doing a strip for 10 years every day, you are a professional. I mean, you got a lot of fans. Does being syndicated make you more or less of a professional? I mean, the way I see it, is syndication just gives you access to more cash, in some way, which is nice. And eventually the goal for every artist to make money. But I'm saying, like, he's been doing his strip 15 years and you've been doing yours 10. To me, that's a professional. You are constantly on time. You're meeting your deadlines, whether you're 3 times a week or you're daily, you are meeting your deadlines. You are showing the professionalism that's there and that you need to be a true, cartoonist. And you're constantly putting out funny ideas, whether they're big hits or they're little hits. People are laughing, people are reading, and to me, that's the idea of success. Are you getting your stuff out there? But I see you both as high-end professionals. That you could be up there with the likes of Schultz and Mort Walker and all these other greats, because you're doing what they did. Both of you are doing what they did. They created stuff, they write, they publish, and it's regular, and they're hitting their deadlines. So I just want to let you know, I consider both of you high-end professionals of cartooning.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. I mean, syndication has always been, ever since I first got into wanting to doing comic strips, syndication was always like my dream. It was my goal. But as time went on, and the landscape has changed so dramatically. Yeah. Where everything you're saying is digital. Newspapers are closed, or they're getting smaller. A lot of newspapers are ending. There's not as many newspapers out there, and some of them are dropping their comic section altogether. So it's very difficult. And I've had I've actually on the back of some of my books, I've gotten quotes from comics editors. Amy Lago, Washington Post Writers Group. I had been in contact with her for years, and I got feedback from her. Brendan Burford, who's a former editor for King Features, I had spoken with him, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just it's just so, like Roger, you probably sent to the syndicates, time and time again, and it's just so difficult. Like you sometimes can get so close, but just not make that leap.
Right.
And even like I even thought like, oh, now I'm doing stuff for Archie Comics. That'll help my chances. But, it gets you. It gets your work in front of more eyes, definitely, and I love it. I love being able to say, hey, I've been doing Archie Comics now for a few years. But I had an encounter with like Brendan Burford when he was still the editor. I actually met him in person.
Yeah.
And actually, this is a story on how I got the gag writing with Rhymes with Orange. I got that.
Great, that's going to be my next question to you. So
yeah. So I'm in some ways I'm helping with a syndicated strip here and there, so that's something, but it's still not like my own work being syndicated. So I had met Brendan Burford, and I had sent my work, to King Features, tons of times before. And when I met him, I had said, oh, I'd sent my work to you before. And he was such a nice guy. We had such a nice conversation. He spoke to me for like 20, 30 minutes. And he said, you know what, why don't you email me directly some of your work? I'm going to take a look at it. And I'll get back to you. I said, that's great. That's something everybody would want who's trying to get syndicated. So I sent him my work. And he got back to me, like it took him about a month to get back to me, and he said he really liked my writing, he liked my timing, but he didn't know if the newspapers would buy the strip, and that's what it all boils down to, is that this is a business.
Yeah. So
it's not that my work or Roger's work isn't good; it's that do they think it will sell to newspapers, and that's the most important thing. And that's what he explained to me, is that he doesn't know, and it's risky because they have to invest a lot of money and take a really big risk, and it's not just up to him; it's up to, like other people on the team to, decide whether or not to syndicate you.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to continue on your point, Francis, with David that you mentioned from Comic Sherpa. We emailed a few times back and forth, and I said, what is it specifically, that we can do as artists to kind of, get above that? I said, on the Facebook page, there's 20,000 readers, so on, so which is pretty good numbers. And then, I looked, I don't know if it's nice to do or not, but I looked at the other artists who did become syndicated, and they are less popular on social media. And then I said, is that a metric you would use? Isn't that like market research? That you would say, okay, this guy, there's webcomics now that are hugely popular. They have millions of followers, and then they I would think they would be a good candidate for syndication. The test marketing is done. There's an audience there, baked in, and you and I and Michael will take our fans, bring it over to the syndicated side, And then he said to me, well, we don't really use popularity as a metric. And then he actually used the phrase, we syndicate many unpopular comics. So I said, did you really say that? He said, yeah.
When also to your point about followers, it's at this day and age, it's you in a lot of ways don't need the syndicate like you did back in the 90s, the 80s, and further back, because you can get your book out there. You can self-publish your own book. And if you did get syndicated, you'd be splitting the profits with a syndicate. Now they have the marketing and they have the resources to really push your comic out there and get it into more readers. So the goal is still syndication, but I've accepted that if I don't get syndicated, I'm still happy with what I'm doing, because I've come to, like what Michael said, I'm a professional. I've gotten to a lot of success, and I'm happy with the success I've had. And I'm, even if you're syndicated, you're still going to want more. You're still going to want to push forward. You're syndicated. So how can I get in more newspapers? How can I get my comic in front of more readers? Maybe I can get an animated deal out of it. Or the sky's the limit. It's just you always want to push forward. You always want to
Well, isn't it like the you know the musical artist who wants to have a label? He could be an indie guy, but he wants to sign with Sony Records, or
Right. Yeah.
it's kind of neat. I was watching a biography of Keith Urban, the country western guy, and then he said, "How did you make it?" I played in these dive bars and so on, and then there was going to be a Sony guy. He's going to be in there, and then they played their heart out, and he approached him and he said, "So what'd you think?" He goes, "Good. You got to keep working, but keep pushing, and then you're going to make it into that." And obviously, he became a mega star. At that point, I don't know. It's a little bit of ambition, I guess, and it's okay. It's exciting, and it's also it drives me a little bit to get that. For better or for worse, I may be wrong, but you make a valid point. We can reach a big audience that we could never have reached before. Just in the old school way. Like inking it and mailing it in. And hoping that the editor would look at it.
Yeah, and just never. That's the thing, is just don't give up. If it happens, I would be ecstatic. I'd be so happy, beyond happy. But if it doesn't happen, so it doesn't happen. I have, my strip has readers, loyal readers who like it. I'm doing professional work, so I'm happy with that. And I'm always gonna again push forward. And I'm sure, Roger, you're gonna just keep trying. You're never gonna stop. And this is actually what I when I met Brendan Burford, I did tell him, I said, like, I do it because I have to do it. I can't stop.
Yeah.
I have to keep making comics. It's just
something that you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say hello to Joe Ryan. He said
I was going to just say that, but you can I'll put it up on the screen so everyone can read it here.
Hey, Joe.
Joe Ryan, who is a loyal follower of our IncrediCon and IncrediChats, thank you for tuning in tonight. I'll read it to you because it's really nice. It says, "Hello, Roger of Gray Zone Comics. I remember you at the Pine Bush UFO Fair. I keep following your work. Congrats on all you've accomplished."
I remember him. Now that I see him.
Yes, he's a regular follower. He's a fresh out of the Kubert School student. I don't know how long you've been out, Joe. You can tell me. I forget. I know you mentioned, I think, once. We always say recent grad. I don't remember how recent. But one of the questions I want to ask, because we were talking about how long you've been doing it, you kind of was like you said, you just have to do it, right, Francis? I feel the same way. I can't stop writing jokes. I can't stop drawing them. It's funny though. I can stop drawing a comic book in a heartbeat, but like my gag writing and stuff, that's just who I am.
It's in you. It's part of you.
Yeah.
But you can't stop breathing.
But, you guys have had long-running strips. How do you stay focused on that one idea every day to just write? Do you guys ever be like, get like, oh, I got this idea for a comic, but I can't do it because I have this strip? Like, how do you stay focused on one story? For so many people, that is incredibly difficult.
You take this one first.
So for me, my strip has evolved over time. Mm-hmm. So if I go back and I look at the strips that I did in 2005 compared to the strips I'm doing now in 2020, it's different. The focus is different. The characters who I focus on are different. So in more recent years, I'd probably say the last 4 to 5 years, the Three Little Pigs have taken center stage in the strip. Whereas before, I was mainly just Little Pig number 3, who was featured every once in a while as comic relief. He was he was just the joke character. And as time went on, I was drawn more to his character, and even the sheep now are featured in the strip a lot. So and Peanuts did this too. Peanuts, when it first started, was a very different strip than it was when it ended. Because it was just Charlie Brown, Patty, and Shermie were the first characters in the strip, and then characters were introduced, characters were let go or just disappeared into the background. Even the Charlie Brown Christmas special. I know I'm getting like off topic here, but
no.
But they had not Peppermint Patty, but the other Patty and Violet were major characters in that Charlie Brown Christmas special. But that came out in 1969. By the time the 90s were around, actually the 70s is when Peppermint Patty came in, I believe, and Violet and Patty faded to the background, and you had other characters come in like Rerun and And that's what I feel like what I'm at least trying to do is just keep evolving over time.
That I think that's important when you kind of have this ensemble cast of characters. You can jump around and pull out your favorites, and somebody who wasn't your favorite once might become it again for whatever reason. It's like watching TV shows with large characters, like even going back to our childhood in the late 70s and early 80s. You look at a show like Little House on the Prairie, where it started with the Ingalls, and the first season or two was really focused around them, but then it starts moving out to the townspeople, and they're just kind of like, hey, I'm hanging out here now, and we're just a character to introduce the story around other people. So I think that that's great. I want to bring the same question to Roger. You've 10 years of Aliens.
Yeah. I got good. I think not good, but I got comfortable at squeezing in anything that I hear or have an idea about into the Alien format. So even if it doesn't particularly lend itself to the Alien, like why would the Easter Bunny be with the Alien? Well, they're gonna be, So I could squeeze them together, through sheer will. And then I had a theory that I look at my earliest work 10 years ago and now, that every artist eventually draws like they work for Disney. That's you just become a Disney person, and that's when I look at it, it just evolves to that point. And I don't know if Francis feels the way, but when I look at his work, it looks, to me that he gets better and more natural with his, the hand becomes freer and things start to go more, more muscle memory, less brain, and then it looks to me fresher and more fun. And I think you have to do it for a long period of time to hit that stride. And then I think it gets easier. I'm going to say that because you get that rhythm, you get that flow. And, like that singer who he could play that guitar note, upside down, backwards. And I think that, stands true for artists as well. And the longer they work, I think the better they become. And I think it's more fun. When I complain about my, lack of commercial success, my friends say, well, you should do something else. How about a cat? Or I'm like, do this, switch. And I'm very reluctant to drop it, and try something new, which is good or bad, But Francis has dropped it, and you actually went back, which is, I admire that you were able to pick it up again. But I'm terrified to drop it at any time. I'm worried, and I say to myself, that's it, I quit. I'm fed up with the world, and then I'll.
One thing, Roger, that you could do. I actually did this back in 2013. I had an idea for another comic strip, but I didn't want to do what I did with Made Me Malfunction and end Suburban Fairy Tales. So what I ended up doing was I put it on a short hiatus, so I can concentrate on the new strip.
Yep.
And then I did them both at the same time, but I would only update the new strip once a week.
Okay.
And then I would do Suburban Fairy Tales, the normal 3 times a week. It was tough to do 4 strips a week because I'm usually doing 3.
Right, yeah.
But I did that for a little while. But if you have another idea that you ever want to do, you don't ever have to drop the thing you're currently working on.
Do it.
Maybe, maybe instead of updating, I know you update almost daily, right? Yeah, so instead of doing it daily, maybe you do it 4 days a week. And then, you can do
some other new.
Yeah, try your new idea for 3 days a week for a little while and see how it goes. And, the thing is that you're, not being syndicated and not, having to answer to anyone but yourself. You can do whatever you want.
The freedom to do that. Oh, I just want to show you guys something.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think I know what it is, and I love it if it's what I think it is.
So the strip has a lot of cows in it, because then it's funny as I just chose Aliens. My father suggested, and when I started, I didn't know anything about it, and then I learned. I didn't know that, for instance, those little guys with the big eyes are called Greys. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did, but I'm a sci-fi geek.
Right.
I love all that stuff.
And then
can I ask?
they have a.
I got a question.
I'm gonna take out some of the cows from the years of the strip, and there's a page of some of all the cows that appeared, over the years. They became characters on their own as well, But that was let me go back, 10 years of this and see what it looks like.
That's great. I have a question though for you, because you just said you didn't know that they were called Greys. did you find out before you named the strip, or did the name change? Like you were drawing aliens and like, oh my God, they're called Greys. I'm going to change the name of the strip.
That's exactly right. So I was in, like, I don't know, 30 strips deep, and people wrote me, "Oh, I love your little gray guys." And I'm like, what do you like? They're like, "Oh, they're called Greys. There's whites, and then there's reptilians, and then, I didn't know this." So there's a whole culture, which I became, intertwined with the real believers, about this. It's like a religion. And then I started to learn about these different levels of aliens that
I'm an X-Files fan, but I had no idea
that they were Greys. Yeah, I had no idea either. So I learned as I went, and then some of that permeated in. And then I heard of Area 51 and Roswell, where the ship supposedly crashed, and that was the extent of my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's it. I learned about it in the 90s because I did some research for, a comic I wanted to do about aliens, and I learned, it's like, oh, Greys, that's how it came to me.
You knew that term, Grey.
Yeah, term, but I'm not one of those people who have the religious type of aspect in there. No, but that's interesting. I love that you didn't have all this great knowledge and then you just learn about it. So have you learned more about like the beliefs? I don't want to say the beliefs, but what people think aliens, their behavior, the way they act, things like that you've brought to your strip. Was that, because you said, I just knew Roswell, I knew Area 51, and I knew they kind of looked like this. But as you drew, did you kind of learn more about to incorporate that into your story?
I met dozens or maybe even hundreds of people who are true believers, and some people like the strip a lot because it's about that subject, and some did not like it, and they thought I was making fun of it, making light of it, and they take it very seriously. Like what is that, Ancient Aliens on the History Channel? That's they are dead serious about that subject, and
really? I love that.
Angry at me that I'm poking fun at it. And I was on an interview like with you guys, and then they brought a real expert on, like he was, hardcore. And then he goes, "I don't really appreciate what you're doing. We have it hard enough without people like you poking fun at it." And I said, "I don't know. You could joke about anything. Don't take it seriously."
That would be like somebody from National Geographic, being angry at Disney because they have walking, talking animals.
Yeah, exactly. Like the caribou doesn't speak English.
That's great. That's great. You know what? I got to be honest. You just made me lose my train of thought. It was, and I also got to say, you two, just talking to you right now, having this conversation is so inspiring to me that I'm not going to do this, but I kind of want to end it just to start drawing right now and start writing. I mean, you guys are but it's just it's fun. It's having this I talk to cartoonists and stuff, like this and things like that, but just hearing your stories, how long you've done it. I mean, Joe Ryan made the comment that's awesome back when you were talking about that you didn't know about what Greys were and the name changed, 30, 40 strips in, which, I agree with, but hearing these things about how you, for the cartoonists out there, watching like Joe, who just said, we are cartoonists, we make light of serious situations.
Right.
I feel like it's just an inspiring story that it's like, hey, let's go do something right now. You've got me energized.
Around you guys makes me more excited. It reminds me of my art school days, like I was solidly in the middle of my class, and there were all these people better, and then rather than being discouraged, I was like, oh, I want to be like that guy or that girl.
It inspires you. You're inspired to do better. Yeah. And we're all creative guys who are just like really passionate about what we do and just comics and cartoons. And so, it's like almost like when you have a collaboration, you all inspire each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Joe Ryan just said, "I want to draw right now." Well, it's true. It really.
After we hang up, I'm gonna do tomorrow's strip, and it's gonna be a family circus theme.
No, but I actually want to say this about your strip specifically, because we talked about how you work. You get up early every morning and you draw your strip for that day. So any coloring, like you draw large too. You said you like draw with like Sharpies and stuff.
Yeah, they're 14 by 17-inch pads.
Yeah, I wanted to know what your tools were. Like, what tools did you use to draw your?
So at first, I started out with those, those fancy brush markers, the Japanese ones, and they're very expensive.
They're like Kudamaki or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and then I'm like, these I can't afford this. So I bought the Sharpies. Has a line of those brush markers. So sketch it in my terrible sketchbook. I wish I did it as nicely as Francis does. Mine are just chicken scratch. And then I pick one of the dozens that I have. I'm like, I feel like doing this one, and then sketch it out on the paper, do the ink, photograph it with the iPad, put it in Photoshop.
So you photograph it with an iPad?
Yeah.
You don't scan it in?
No, I don't have a scanner. Yeah, just an iPad. But it's just an ink drawing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, first of all, you have is your iPad on a tripod? Because that's very.
Yeah, I put it on the floor and I do this. I hold it and take a picture.
And then do you color it on your iPad?
Yeah, no, on the screen. I'm on an iMac, so I'm talking to you guys on the iMac, and I have Photoshop on that.
So you scan it or I guess take a picture of it with the iPad, then you move it to the Mac, and then you do it on.
I literally email it to myself. To my email address, download it. Put it on. But it's a big drawing. Let me show you one. Then I'd like to see Francis's work.
Yeah, because that was actually. I'm glad you brought this up. Because I was actually going to get back to the tools, because a lot of people always want to know what tools are an artist using. What size are you drawing at? They want to know those type of things. So
Strathmore.
And you just use Sketch. You don't even use Bristol or anything.
No.
Is that 14 by 17?
Yeah. You got a good eye, kid. So that would be the Sketch.
Wow.
And then I photograph it. This is the one where they crash, and then he says, I stocked the ship with Oreo cookies, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. What else? Chocolate chip cookies, and then he says, well, I guess you know where I'm going with all of this. Yeah. He wants milk, out of the cow. So, but that would be photographed and then put into the computer.
I want to ask you something about that though. When you're, because a scanner might pick this up. I don't know how your stuff works, but the sketch pad, the paper itself, like a lot of artists draw in Bristol because it's smooth. They'll use the smooth surface. That has a bit of a tooth to it. Does that show up in your photos?
No, because you increase the contrast, and it literally is black and white. So there's none of that texture left over.
I used to use the Strathmore Smooth Bristol 300 series.
Yeah.
And I remember one time accidentally buying the one with the tooth on it.
Vellum?
Yeah, like I bought it because I ordered them online, and I remember getting I remember being annoyed by the tooth because I like having just complete smooth paper.
So, sorry, were you going to say something else? I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, you go ahead. And
no, I was going to ask what is your tools and working method?
So, it's probably recently. I used to use Bristol 300 series. And I would use micron pens and sometimes a brush pen to like add a little bit of weight to the line.
Yeah.
But within the last year, I've moved completely to digital, so I draw directly onto a tablet now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
do you find enough resistance? Like with the smoothness of the glass.
That's the thing. If you I have a Cintiq that I use, which is it's not smooth. It's kind of it's like a matte kind of a finish on it. So
I didn't know that.
I find it has resistance. And then I bought another one. I actually have it here. I'll hold it up. I'm actually opening up one of my things. So I actually bought this one for portable use.
Okay.
And this is actually a strip that I'm working on right now. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. I would have sworn that you used regular ink.
I used to use it, but now I draw right on there, and I just find it better to be like it's more portable. I can draw anywhere I go. I like the tools, and I'm willing to take more risks because if I make a mistake, you just undo.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, question though for you, Francis. You said that was a Cintiq that you got, the portable one?
Oh, well, no. I have a Cintiq over here. You can actually.
Oh, you don't have to hold it up. I know. Yeah. So I'm saying, what's the portable device you're using?
So this was it's a Samsung It's a Samsung book, something Galaxy Book. That's what it's called.
Okay.
It's a Windows tablet because it was cheaper than getting,
Apple product.
Yeah, like an Apple one. But I also find that it's thin, and I've got like full Windows on it, so I can have full like Photoshop on there. I actually like to draw with Clip Studio, so I draw in Clip Studio. I color in Photoshop, but I can also have Illustrator, InDesign, because I do graphics as well. So I can have like my whole Adobe suite on there, which I really like.
I recently purchased right around the holidays time because they, I found a discount online. The Surface Pro, the Windows Surface Pro, which I like. My problem with it, though, I just feel it's a little too small. Like my Cintiq's a 27-inch. I come from animating, so like for me, I'm drawing large strokes and I'm doing all this stuff. I work on my iPad. I got the largest iPad that came out back in 2017, I think, like 12 point whatever. I got to zoom in to do a lot of my large strokes. On that one, that's even smaller. I think it's like a 10-inch pad. So the smaller pads go, I feel the more trouble I have. I'm sorry, but go ahead. What were you saying?
No, so the one. This one is. I think might be a 12-inch. Maybe. Yeah, I think this is a 12-inch. And yeah, it was a little hard at first, but I don't know if you can see what I did was I moved the menu over here, so all the menu is right over there. So I have all this for drawing. Mm-hmm. It works for me. I guess I zoom in on each panel when I need to do detail and also I have looked into the Surface, but I didn't like the Surface because Microsoft uses this technology called N-Trig, I think it's called, and I've noticed that the way I draw and the way I ink is that if you draw really slowly, the lines are a little jaggy.
Yeah, they do. I tend to see that, but the when I got mine and before I ordered mine, it was one of those like slick deal websites type of thing where it's like get all this for this price, and I was like, well, it's a Surface Pro, I think 6 or 7, I forgot what number. I have a really good. It's right over here. I'll just take a quick look at it. But what is I also got the you can see I got the keyboard that comes with it.
Nice.
Well, I had to buy separate. But what I like about it. Oh, by the way, what I was saying was they say the pen technology and everything is based off Cintiq technology. That's what I was told. I went to a Microsoft store and told, but I find that the pen that you buy with it, this was like I got on sale. It's like $60. It's normally like $100, like the Apple Pencil. I find this to be more responsive than the Apple Pencil on an iPad. I feel
tilt sensitivity, right?
What?
I think that has tilt sensitivity now. If it's one of the new ones.
Yes, it does. And I think this equals my Cintiq in the sense of feel of drawing. The difference is my Cintiq, like yours, it's got this matte finish. So as long as I'm wearing my smudge guard, I don't feel like I'm touching glass or I'm touching something. It feels better, and I feel the same way. But this one here, you can feel the coldness of the glass. If I don't work with this on here, I can't use it, But like you, I bought this for portability because I do like my iPad. However, I don't have access to Photoshop on an iPad. Well, now you do, but when I was, I don't have access to Photoshop or Illustrator or even, animation software or whatever I want to do. So that's why I went with this, and I love it. But
I know your problem with the smooth glass. I couldn't stand it either. What I ended up doing was buying a matte screen protector.
Yeah,
you put it on, and it gives it like a Cintiq-like feel.
Yeah, I gotta get that too. I didn't. Oh, actually, I think did I get one for here? No, I got a protector, so now it's better. But I still feel I haven't used this in a few days, so it's just probably dead and cold from being in the room. But yeah, when I bought this, I use this for travel because I travel and talk about cartooning and stuff, and it's just easier to have something like this. And when I visit schools, most schools are PC based, so it's easier, right?
Yeah, for workshops, definitely.
And then we go into quarantine, and it's like, well, I have everything else. I don't need this right now. I feel like I wasted my money, But I mean, I do enjoy it, and I'm more of a Mac guy than a PC guy. But I will always recommend the Surface is fantastic. So I'm sorry. Anyway, I don't want to sidetrack or like make this about me. I really want to just hear more from you guys. But like I said, it's just fun talking with you, inspiring me.
Oh yeah.
Kind of shop
Yeah.
talk now. Last night I did like a panel like this with a bunch of female fantasy illustrator and authors. And I want to ask you one of the questions I asked them, because I always find this interesting for me. When you guys write your stories or you're drawing them, I know they come out in comic format, but do you think in another format? Do you think like, oh, this would be, I'm writing this, but in my head it's animated, or this is being written for film or something? You know what I mean? Like, are you writing, even though you're doing the comic genre, are you writing it differently in your head?
I'll let Roger go with answer first.
So yes, but mostly towards the gray zone strip, 95%. But I have been for a few years submitting ideas to the New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
So some ideas I think lend themselves more to that. I have about 35 or 36 cartoons that I had submitted to the New Yorker. So some ideas which I like, I said there's no way I could twist them into the Alien format, so they would do better in that format. One was I just recently submitted again with the baking of the bread. During this COVID, there's like a hipster guy with his mask on at a park, and it's in that scratchy style of the New Yorker, rather than the smooth look of the comic strip would look like, and. The pigeon, he's feeding the pigeons, and one pigeon is walking away with a giant loaf of bread, and he says, "Thank you, COVID-19," because they have so much extra bread. Even the pigeons are benefiting from that. So that I couldn't translate that to the alien world, so that went onto the New Yorker style.
Okay. How about you, Francis? Any other formats in your head when you're writing or creating?
Well, when I write my comic strip, I have I showed you guys earlier my idea book, and I really I draw out rectangles and draw the panels in there. So I really just write it like a strip. But when I do Archie, I type it up in Word because it's a script that I'm writing. So I am thinking about different panels because they have a certain format that they prefer to have the script in. So it'll be like panel 1, and then I describe what's going to be happening in the panel, and then you do the dialogue. So it's kind of like a movie script in a way. So you do have to think differently when you're writing that. And it's also, writing a comic strip, it's a gag. You got 3 panels, 4 panels to really tell your story and to tell your gag, whereas with Archie you have multiple pages, so you have a narrative that flows through. So it's definitely different.
I actually was going to ask you about Archie and how you submit your scripts, because I worked for Archie for a little bit. I was a production artist for them back in the early 2000s, and I saw some scripts, and some people would not submit them as like text documents like you would. They would draw out the panels and kind of lightly write it in. I was wondering, is that how you submit it or not? But obviously it's not how you submit.
Yeah.
And
some
I'm sorry.
Some of the writers still sketch it out. I've seen other people's stuff that they sent in, and they do sketch it out. The reason I do it in Word is because I'm always going back and editing it so much, because I'll write it out and I'll be like, well, now I want to go through it again, and I want to, maybe it'd be funny if Jughead said this, or Betty and Veronica said this. So there's a lot of edits before I actually submit it to them. Okay. And I can, if you're drawing it out, and maybe I might change the script completely, like a completely different page. It's harder to when you draw it out than when you do it in Word, I found.
Sorry, my computer was about to fall asleep. I just opened it up. Let's go to some of the comments. Joe Ryan has commented a bit. I don't know what he said so true to now. We're going back to 9:10, which is 9:24. I can't remember that far back sometimes. I'm sorry, Joe. He says, I saved up for an iPad Pro, and I'm getting it to color my comic as soon as Best Buy opens. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Best Buy has some great the reason I like Best Buy is because of their what do they call it?
Return policy?
Warranty. Yeah, the warranty and return policy. Apple, but I'm a business. I have my Apple business account with them, so I do get some things for being that. You know, and I don't know, and just to talk about that comment, there's great programs out there on the iPad Pro. They just got Photoshop in there. I haven't seen any of the updates, but I'm not happy with the Photoshop version on the iPad.
Okay.
But you mentioned, Francis, that you work in Clip Studio. I pay for my iPad subscription to Clip Studio. It's fantastic. You know, Procreate is great, but I would not do a finished comic in Procreate. Clip Studio is definitely the way to go. Just a little tip for you, Joe, out there. I don't know if you would agree or disagree. I don't know your thoughts on that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Or
what I like about Clip Studio, at least on the Windows version, you can buy it once and that's it. You don't have to pay a subscription fee.
Nice.
So I'm still using Photoshop CS6 because I'm trying to avoid having to pay a subscription fee.
Yeah, me too. Same thing. That's what I'm using.
I wish I had Photoshop CS6. I'm up to the current but I have to do it for my job. You know, I tutor, I teach, and
Yep.
I have to know the updated versions of the software. You know, so but yeah, it's smart to go that route and use an older version because you don't want to pay. You know, and you know it's expensive too. I mean, I pay, what do I pay? I pay something like $30 a month for the entire Adobe suite. You know,
And it adds up. It adds up. And I feel like I can do everything I need to do in CS6.
Yeah, I feel like
Now, let me ask you, Frank, why do you prefer to draw in Clip Studio but color in Photoshop? Because you can color in Clip Studio too.
I'm more used to Photoshop for coloring, and the only reason I started using Clip Studio was because it works better than Adobe CS6 does for touch devices.
Okay.
So when CS6 came out, you know, there weren't a lot of touch devices out. They weren't really optimized for that. But Clip Studio was, you know, cheap, you know, compared to Adobe. You pay one price, and it's optimized for touch. You get a lot of pressure sensitivity with the brushes. And then I just move it over to Photoshop because I have all my swatches in Photoshop for my characters.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I'm familiar with. And also there's more options for, you know, I can save it as many different file formats, where Clip Studio is a little bit more limiting. You know, I know you can export it as like a PNG and a JPEG. But I think Photoshop's a little more versatile for that.
Yeah, I find for myself in Clip Studio, I like the brushes, like that what is it called, the Real G Pen or something.
Yeah, that's what I use.
That's what you use. That's what I like, as opposed, if I could find a brush that's comparable in Photoshop, I'd probably go strictly Photoshop. But that in Clip Studio is like my main reason for wanting to use Clip Studio. It just really has that feel of I don't want to say a dip pen because it doesn't feel like a dip pen to me, but like a flexible tip, you know, marker. Hold on. Joe said he had Clip Studio for his laptop at Qbert. Right here, you had mentioned, Mike, that this is one-time only fee, and then you get it for, actually that was Francis who mentioned it. So you're talking on the, you know, but if you buy for PC or Mac, as long as you're buying it for a desktop machine or a laptop,
correct,
Clip Studio is a one-time payment. On the iPad, it's either $4 or $8 a month, and if you don't do the $8 a month one, you're limited on your features, and it's not really going to work well for someone trying to do pro work. I think if you're a student, $4 a month is fine. Use the limitations.
And my tablet is a full Windows tablet. You know, it's got Windows 10 on it.
Yeah.
So it counts as I get the desktop version for it. And
yeah. I got to look into it. I didn't think about doing that. I was just looking at a software that's free. I was told on Sunday, one of my friends I interviewed on here, and he was drawing. He did a drawing demo on his Cintiq, and his name's DJ O'Connor, and he was using Adobe Fresco, I believe it's called, which is a free drawing software.
I've heard of it, but I've never tried it.
I've never tried it, but I'm going to download it on my Surface because it's supposed to. It looked really nice, and if I could use a free software without spending the money on Clip Studio right now to have, because I haven't put it on the Windows yet, you know, and I could draw a full comic on it, I might as well go with that, you know. And Roger, outside, you don't do any digital art outside of like coloring and adding the text, correct?
That's it. In my other life, I was a graphic artist and like a product designer, and then so we had Illustrator, and I go back as far as like PageMaker. I don't know if you whippersnappers.
I don't know who I'm close. I'm 44, so I don't know who I'm closer to.
I'm 51, so I was using PageMaker on the original Mac.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then so just now I'm just using that version of CS Photoshop, and that's it. And then that's the only software I use. Not even Illustrator. So it's enough for me. I think the comic strips don't require too much computing power. The layers are what's really important. Having the layering. The Joe Ryan mentioned that the levels. I use those levels frequently. Contrast and that's enough. And the rest just brushes for some shading and shadowing and things like that.
Yeah. Sorry, your work's still on the other screen. I turn and look at it, and I just want to read more. Where was I going to go with this? So yeah, we talked about digital stuff. We've talked about, what keeps you guys focused and stuff. What is it? I don't want to use what is it. I really should remember to write down my questions. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what? You're going in to talk not just with your friends, but you're talking business about their strips that and are very familiar with. I don't need to write down my question.
Consciousness.
So, but it's, so, God.
Well, pull up some of the work. Pull up some of Francis. I think it's kind of fun to talk about it.
Yeah, we can look at that again. I mean, I don't want to say, because it's not like I didn't have questions. I'm just blanking because of all this. Like I said, it's just fun, and my mind's going everywhere. So let's take a look. We'll go back to Francis' work. Francis, I do want to say, in addition to, what was it? It was the sock puppet. It was the mother. There was something else that you did. I'd have to scroll through it. That was just fantastic.
I like the one there with the gingerbread man. I see a gingerbread man running.
Okay. Oh yeah. That was that was from a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I'll read this one to everyone here. But I remembered the question I was going to now. But it says, hey, how come you're not happily chanting, run as fast as you can? You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. And where's my mouse over here? Then he says, oh.
Very cute.
I love that one too.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't look like I loved it though, so I'm going to add my little heart to it. Actually, let's get off this right now because I remembered I don't want to forget the question.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
What led you, Roger, to doing it as a single panel, and Francis, what led it to you to doing a multi-panel strip when, like, I don't know. I'll let you answer before I make any comments. I don't want to answer the question as I'm asking. So Whoever wants to go first.
Go first this time.
Oh, okay. So a lot of the strips that I read growing up were multi-panel strips. My favorite ones, like I mentioned before, Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield, Peanuts. And one thing I noticed, and this is something I don't know, just being an artist is something that I observed was Peanuts was, for most of its run was 4 panels, always 4 panels for the dailies. And then I think it was the 80s, right? When Schultz then changed the format so that it was sometimes 1 long panel, sometimes it was 2 panels, sometimes it was 4 panels. It was whatever, his idea was. And sometimes you'd see like 1 long panel and, Snoopy's on his doghouse and it's just, that's the whole strip. And I liked that freedom of being able to, hey, if I want to do 1 single panel, I can do 1 single panel. If I want to do 4 panels, I can do 4 panels. If I want to do 3 panels, I can do 3. So that's why I went with that format.
Okay. How about you, Roger?
Okay, for me, I was so blown away by Gary Larson that I said I want to be him, and then I love that single panel format. So 99% are. A few can be 2, 3, 4 panels if the gag is only able to be told that way. But I was reading some stories about the New Yorker, and then they too are typically a single panel. That it's difficult to collate your ideas into one panel. And even they said I don't know if you guys would agree or not, but the captionless or wordless cartoon is the most difficult of all. No dialogue, no words, just the image. So that to me is very challenging, and I enjoy that. And I remember back in my FIT days where I went to school, one of the professors.
I went to FIT too.
Oh, cool! I saw that. And then he said to me, Morton Case was the guy, but that's way before your time. He said that artists need to be constrained. So if there's some sort of limitation, you become creative. If you're boxed in a little, it seems counterintuitive, but it worked for me. So I like that single panel because I had to channel my nervous energy into that one focus point. So I that seems attractive to me.
I like the way that thought process goes. You know, I've written both. I know you both know I had a strip last year called The Wiz.
Yep.
It was I know that it was just really a challenge for me, like not a challenge to write, but can I put out a strip 2 to 3 times a week? And it was just something, and that's how it was started. But I felt writing those 3-4 panels were very challenging. I only had a few that were like, I would be like, wow, I'm proud of this. And towards the end, I did like maybe 3 or 4 single panel gags, and I felt I succeeded with that. I feel like what you say, the being constrained, I think having that freedom makes me nervous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, your brain.
You're still constrained into, you know, something that's that big.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I get that. Like I'll send it to you, Francis. I sent a single panel gag to Roger the other day, just a sketch, and he gave me some great advice on it. And I do that sometimes when I come up with some gags that I'm not sure on. I'll send it to a friend of mine that I trust that, you know, also I know won't steal it. Although I will say, Roger, I sent you a joke once, and you're like, oh, I was inspired by it. Like the next day or 2 days later, there was a comic based on. It wasn't my joke, but it was inspired. You said by what I sent you.
Is that all right, or did I over?
No. I was flattered by it. I'm like,
I'm glad.
I saw this, and I was like, this is my thing. It cracked me up. Because, I mean, it wasn't the joke I wrote. It was completely different. Okay. But I could tell that what I sent you wouldn't have done it if I didn't send you that.
That's probably true.
It's okay. It happens. It really does happen.
There are times where I've written a joke, and this will go back to, because I submit to Rhymes with Orange weekly. Yeah. And I'll write something like, oh my God, this is going to be so funny. Let me just Google this to see if someone else came up with the same idea. And then, you know, like half the time, I'm like, damn it, you know, someone else did the same gag.
That is a great point. I post on this website called Imgur. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I've heard of the website.
They are brutal, mean people. Love us. They're bastards, and they there's a downvote button. Mm-hmm. And, I had drawn a cartoon or whatever, and then they would find something similar and immediately post it underneath. You know, so if it's anywhere near what you've done, you know, like, aha, you've stolen it from this person, or someone's done this already. So they're very quick to do that. And I saw one, a pretty Jim Benton. He's a cartoonist who I really admire and I like. He did a gag where a toothbrush is very angry for being a toothbrush because it's a terrible job. And then at the end, you know, he's complaining about it, and the toothbrush is put down, and the toilet paper says, you know, yeah, tell me about it, you know, because that's a worse job. But I had seen a comic strip where a roll of toilet paper comes in and says, I've had a bad day. And then he's talking to just the inner roll. And the inner roll says, yeah, tell me about it. So I know that people are absorbing stuff through osmosis.
Yeah.
Read strips and gags.
Yeah. That stuff happens. I know I've written jokes and I'll like go back after a while and be like, oh wait, that's from this. And all of a sudden I'll go through my Far Side collection. I'm like, I stole a Far Side joke. Why? You know, I may have had a different punchline, but I'm like, people are going to think I'm ripping off Gary Larson, you know?
No, it just happens. Sometimes, like, you don't remember. Like, you think you came up with something and you don't remember. That's why a lot of times now, especially, I will Google the idea before I submit it, just to make sure that no one else came up with that.
And what would you search for? Like, joke about gingerbread man running to bathroom. Like, would you do that?
I mean, some of them I know that, like, I don't think anyone came up with this, but you know, like I'll search. I'm trying to think of an example. I had a joke where there was a praying mantis. You know, and you know how the female eats the head of. Yeah, so I did one where I think I did one where he was eating the head for dinner. But somebody had done that already, so I didn't even bother submitting it. You know, like that's just one example.
Because there's a New Yorker gag that I enjoyed. That the woman, you know, the girl praying mantis is on the right side, and the male is on the left side, and the male is missing his head, and then she says, "You slept with her, didn't you?"
Yeah.
Missing his head, but that inspired a joke. You know, I have to say, where the alien has Henry VIII. And you know he's found a perfect mate for Henry VIII, and it's this giant, you know, alien praying mantis who will do what he did to all his wives. You know, he chopped the heads off all the wives, so they're a perfect couple. You know, but is it ripping it off? I don't know. You know,
if you have to think, it's very hard to. There's no original ideas anymore. I think it's all been done. It's just you're telling them in a different way.
Right.
You know, think about how. I mean. All the superhero movies that exist. I mean, there's always a bad guy, and they always have to stop the bad guy. So it's just the narrative that's always existed, and you know, you're just telling it in kind of with your spin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Francis, I wanted to ask you. I know we talked a little bit about this, like privately when we did a test. This magazine. This is what is this called? The comic strip cartoon. Yeah, you were in this magazine in issue 2, and it's weird. I find issue 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, and 10. I know I have like, you know, hard copy of issue 2, which is on the back cover. Now, what I find interesting here, let me just take the screen real quick to show. It's just interesting that you're on the back cover here. That's number 2. There's your strip.
Yes.
With my finger down here at the bottom here.
Yeah, I have that issue.
But right above you is David Reddick, who was supposed to be on tonight with us. And I found a small little image of your stuff here in a blurb. It says, Francis Bonnet's Suburban Fairy Tales continue to give us laughs in 2019, along with his latest book, collection strip. Francis also continues to provide stories and cover ideas for Archie. So it was just a little blurb, I guess, from the original.
Yeah, it was like an update. Like, what are you up to now compared to when that issue came out? And
what I wanted to ask you about this, because I don't know if they're making more, but I was an avid reader of it. Like I've always said, I'm a strip guy. I love reading stuff with strip artists, and some of the stuff was great, especially in this one here, because it recaps everything. Anything you missed, you can find new stuff, and they give you, you know, new artists to look at. And I followed a lot, like on Instagram, because of these magazines. And what was it like when you were? I want to know, like, what was the experience like when you were asked, "Hey, do you want to be part of this magazine, to be interviewed on there?" What was that like for you? And has anyone, you know, like when you do shows, has anyone ever come up to you and asked you about, you know, this magazine?
Well, when I first was asked, I thought it was like some kind of phishing scam or not real, you know. But then I was like, oh wait, this is legit, and I was just honored, you know. No one's really brought it up to me. You're the first person to bring it up. I don't know how widely read the magazine is, but yeah, I was just honored, you know, that they reached out to me. I didn't have to go seeking them out, you know.
Yeah. No, that's always good, because they're, you know, obviously they're looking and seeing what's
out there,
doing well and what's popular and stuff. I think that you know, I think that's pretty cool. So Roger, I did want to ask you, going back kind of to your I don't want to call them crazy UFO fans or the people who do that. You were published for a while. I don't know if you still are doing it, in like a Roswell magazine, correct?
Yeah, so the only paying gig I have is in the Roswell Daily Record. And it's a newspaper, you know, not surprisingly, in Roswell, New Mexico. So I had it for three days a week, and then they cut it back to 1 day a week now, So it's in that newspaper. But I'm still, submitting work every week to them, and they
do they run the gray zone in the paper?
They do. But,
that's great.
Yeah, so thank you. That's neat. But now I've learned there's a separate section, where they would put it in their own paper, and as you guys know, the syndicated stuff goes in a different section.
Well, that's another thing. That's another option. Is we were talking about syndication before, but self syndication, or that's another option, like just emailing or contacting newspapers, publications.
Yeah, that's a great venue. I tried some other papers. I was hoping that would lead to other, opportunities. It's funny because the editors changed over the years, and some were big fans and other ones didn't care for it, and humor is so subjective.
Yeah.
That's what's something that somebody likes, the other person didn't care for. So it was always, kind of an up and down. I'm still in there. I'm still kicking, but it's still over there. And that's kind of satisfying to have it at least in print. I don't know why. I'm old school, and just seeing the magazine, with Francis's work, it's cool. I get a kind of a kick out of seeing that.
Yeah, no, it's fun when you especially I always get excited when it's someone I know who's in a magazine. I'm not one of those guys like, oh crap, he got in a magazine and I didn't. What's the problem? Well, he's been drawing a strip for 15 years and I did a so-so one for 8 months. It's like, and my work is different. I find myself to be, and I don't want to use this term as like I equal to what this guy did, but I think I'm a little more towards the far side-ish, where the humor is a little bizarre at times, so I don't find my audience in the right location. I actually think I'd do better if I was sending my work out to England, and I think I have more of a bit of a British humor, a little dryness to it, sarcasm. So I gotta figure out a way to get out there. But it's
you mentioned that because earlier you asked a question like, how have we changed, over the time? And then I started out on Facebook, then I went to Instagram, so immediately I had to draw my cartoons as a square because Instagram is just a square format.
Yeah.
It didn't lend itself to the longer. Now they are. I see they're adapting it to those multiple panels. And my style turned a little more edgy, I think, because of Imgur. And I like their work. And they were very edgy and kind of clever and snarky. So I like that, And then people said, oh, you got to have more of an edge. And then other people like the innocence. You can't please everyone. Find your way and go for it.
But well, actually, I want to get a question to you in a second about the social media stuff, but because we're going to end soon. But I just wanted to say, like as I said, I'm happy when my friends and people I see get successful because, like I said, I'm not the jealous type like that. I think it's fantastic because these people are getting recognized for the great work that they're doing, and like I said in the beginning, you two are both incredible professionals. In my opinion, you guys meet deadlines. You create funny stuff. I mean, that's really what this is about. You're sharing your love out there, whether you're seeing money coming in from it or not. You're sharing a passion, and I think that's fantastic. But what I want to know is the different social media sites that you're on. How do they affect you in readership? Do you see more on Instagram, more on Facebook, or another site? Because really, when you're posting, you're self-syndicating in a way. You're posting like you, Roger. You said you still post on Sherpa, on Comic Sherpa. Like, where are you seeing your fan base really being the strongest, and how are you using social media to really to its fullest to maybe either draw in more fans or just promote the heck out of your comic? How are you guys doing that, and which ones are better options?
Well, I'll start. For me, it was Facebook is the biggest draw for me. I don't do as well on Instagram. I may have 1,200 people on Instagram, and then on Imgur, there's not so much a fellowship, but rather a total accumulation of points. And Twitter, I do terrible.
Yeah.
I don't even know. A few hundred.
Oh yeah, I gave up on Twitter years ago.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know if it lends itself, what sites are better. Rather, I don't know if you guys post your work on dedicated comic sites other than Sherpa. I don't know, Francis, do you do that?
I still post on Sherpa.
Mm-hmm.
I found that with when I was on Go Comics, when Sherpa was part of Go Comics still, that I got a lot of subscribers and readership from that. And I was really disappointed when they got rid of the Sherpa section and just made it back to its own. Because I don't feel like anybody's really even looking at Sherpa anymore.
You got to dig for it.
I got to be honest, I didn't know it existed anymore. I knew they were redoing something, and then they said, we'll be back, and I never heard or saw anything from it again. So
they never came back. And I look and see what strips are updated. There's so many strips on there, but what is there? Probably only like 10 or 20 now, yours and mine included, that are still updating regularly.
Really? I was friendly with a guy who did a strip called Gravy, and I thought it was wonderful. It was a chubby dog, and he was, and his friends, and he was awkward, and I chatted with him a little bit, and he was quite disheartened by the whole thing. He was quite, and in my opinion, was great. I thought he was fantastic, and syndicatable, and dude, you should be on the other side. And he really took it to heart.
I still follow some of those Sherpa people on like on Instagram, and I've seen them on Facebook. There's one strip I follow, something about Celeste.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So I follow him. Eric Selena, I think his last name is. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. But yeah, I try to follow the guys I can, and every once in a while I'll go back to Sherpa just to see what's been updated. That's why I remembered your strip, Roger, because I remember I used to read that when it was on Go Comics.
Thank you. That makes me feel good just to hear that still living over there. It's kind of like a zombie graveyard.
Yeah, but it seemed like it ended so abruptly, and
yeah, I don't know what to expect. It's kind of disheartening. You got to keep soldiering forward.
But on the plus side, we get a free subscription because we are kind of grandfathered in. I go back and read. I read a lot of the strips on there, and yeah.
But it had a broad range of quality. I think some were terrific and some were, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just ended when I was getting ready to finally do a strip, and I was getting ready to start posting, and I'm like, I'm gonna join next month. The strip's almost ready to go. No. It was gone. And so, I thought that was a fantastic service. I really did.
Yeah, likewise.
I learn about things and see stuff I would not normally see. And like you said, some of it was kind of, others though were like, why isn't this on the other side of it?
Right. And you guys remember something called Smack Jeeves? Smack Jeeves?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I posted some stuff on there, but like our work, I would categorize not really for that audience. It was very anime-ish. Most of it was that anime style, which I don't get, but it was very heavily that way. So I was kind of an outlier there, and it got minimal attention.
Yeah. I got to be honest with you guys. I am actually out of questions now, so. We're a little short, we're going to end a little early. I think, I'm sure I could come up with more, but we talked about everything I really wanted to touch upon. I'm going to put up your contact info again here for your Instagrams, so people can follow you. And are these also your Facebook Instagrams too? Not Instagram. Your Facebook, pages.
Yeah,
that's mine. Similar. Yep.
Okay.
Easy to find. Just I think like with Francis, you just search for the name.
Yeah.
And it'll pop up.
And I do have Twitter, and that's the only one that's my name, Francis Bonnet. At Twitter.
So I want to thank you guys for joining us. Joining me today. Usually I have a co-host. Sorry, for joining me tonight. I had a great time. Is there anything you guys any final words you want to say, or just anything you want to pitch, or something like I have the stuff up here, but is there anything else you want to mention that I didn't get around to?
Francis, after you.
Yeah, just I had a great time. The time flew by.
Yes.
And anybody who wants to follow me on Instagram, that's my Instagram name down there.
I would say that it was just, I enjoyed spending time with you guys. I brought it up that it reminded me of my school days, and I like to be around other creative people because I think we lift each other up.
Yeah.
Rather than competing, like, this, that, and if any of us make it over that wall, I'm happy.
I have to say that about cartoonists in general. I feel across the board, we're all very supportive of each other. Every cartoonist I've ever met has only been, kind and gracious and
that's a great point.
Doesn't matter how high, you are or how low, we're all like on equal.
That's a good point. I think, it's almost like, like we're all in the war together, and we kind of have that camaraderie because you know what it takes. And I don't think the general public knows, and it's what we go through, in our heads, we're all stuck in here all the time.
Yeah. I completely agree with both of you. I'm going to put you guys, do you mind hanging out for a few moments? I'm just going to put you backstage and I'll close up.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So I'm going to remove you guys real quick. So yeah, again, I just want to thank Francis and Roger who came on, and I had a great time. It's always fun to chat with friends about, the business and things that they're doing and whatnot. I also just want to thank everyone who viewed us tonight, and hopefully will view us again at some point. Repeating this one. We're doing it a full week of these chats. Tomorrow night, it's going to be me, Mike, Vinny, and Ryan, like our normal Thursday nights, but our special guest is going to be Marty Grabstein, and our topic is Saturday Morning Flashback, where we're going to talk about our love for the cartoons that inspired us and that we just loved throughout our childhood. And we got some other great stuff coming up Friday and Saturday, so please tune in, and I will see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys.